It's Christmas 2009, and Lil Billy here is excited because he's hoping for a copy of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and he's got one more gift from Grandma. But I guess Billy's grandma was having a dementia episode because now he's opened up something called Spectrobes Origins. What the fuck?
The galaxy's darkest threat has descended upon us. Now you must meet the challenge. Discover the secrets and save the universe.
So after replaying Gen 5 from my last video that you can see here, I remember playing another game that I love that I don't see much about outside of a couple niche videos, and that game is Spectrum. Specifically Spectrobes Origins, as it was the game I played the most as a kid on my Nintendo Wii. Spectrobes Origins was the third and apparently final installment of the Spectrum series. The game was developed by Studio Genki, while the first two were developed by the Jupiter Corporation. Now, before we start tearing into the gameplay and the story itself, I want to preface this by saying, yes, I know it's like Pokemon. It has some elements like Pokemon. But you know what? Pokemon's not the only monster collection game in the world, so it's not going to take any negative marks from me because of that. While this video will mainly be about Spectrobes Origins, I do want to give a brief and simplified summary of the first two games to summarize and help understand the game as plot points from both games intersect. So to start off the summary, there are these things called Crawl. And Crawl are these like black ooze kind of creatures that morph and can take different shape. These things basically want to take over the world, absorb any kind of living matter, kill everything, yada yada, basic evil stuff. You play as Rollin and Gina, two intergalactic cops that are trying to hunt down all the Crawl and exterminate them. With them is their Spectrobe Komainu, which honestly seeing this little thing at first, I thought,
And Meatwad needs to learn some morals and values.
Look at him and tell me there's a god. He made me in his own image.
but he's chill and he has a really cool evolution line that I want to talk about later. So in the game, you basically go kill Crawl and save the universe by clearing every planet of the Crawl using weapons that you gain and your Spectrobes that you later uncover. Again, both of these will be discussed later. As you planet hop and kill more Crawl, you eventually run into this guy who's an emo fuck named Crux, and he's basically controlling all of the Crawl and trying to get them to take over the universe for him. You basically do this over and over in the first two games until the second game you enter a portal leading to you going into the story of Origins. So in Origins, you're pulled into the Kaios system, and Crux is fucking up the place. So you have to stop him, and you go on this quest to collect the 5 shards of the Beast King, which this name goes so fucking hard. You do this by defeating each of the boss Crawl on the 6 planets that you go through, from Yterra, Doldogo, Hogaria, Mihat, Slaso, and Bahamut. Eventually, as you're planet hopping, you find out that Crux actually isn't Crux, but is instead this dude named Jado, who's like mega emo, and he's referred to as the first high crawler and the strongest crawler of them all. Now I had to look back at this and make sure, but Crux is actually a character in the game, but in the way the wiki describes them, it seems like it says Jado is the only Crux. There are 2 Crux. There's Crux and then Jado Crux, which is fake. Once you find this out, it's kind of when you hit the point where you talk with Commander Grant, who is the leader of the Intergalactic Police, and a featured character over the 3 games, but has never really been like a high story point until now. As the story goes, Crux was actually a Spectrobe's master and was friends with Commander Grant and Camtoga, who was his original partner, and you meet on Kogaria. But Crux, going against his friend's wishes, tried to experiment and control the Crawl, leading to his eventual corruption. After that, you basically learn that he has this giant planet-sized sphere called the Crawlosphere, and he intends to crash into Yterra, the starting planet, and basically take over the entire Kaios system. From there, after collecting the 5 shards, it turns into the ultimate form Spectrum, Kaio. After you assemble the Beast King, you fly up to the Crawl Sphere, beat Crux, and as you do, you destroy the Crawl Sphere. From there, pieces return to Yterra, and there's an end credit scene basically showing that Crux survived, not the fake Crux, real Crux. And at the time, I think they were trying to hint at another iteration of the game, but unfortunately, this is the last of the series. Now that we've talked more about the story and you have an understanding of how the whole game pieced together, I want to talk a bit about the mechanics and the combat, and even the Spectrobes themselves that were all really interesting. A fun part of Origin's mechanics was the fact that you used the Wiimote and the Nunchuck in tandem to obtain Spectrobes, and a big part of obtaining new Spectrobes was finding fossils, and then you could also use the child Spectrobes, which is the first stage, to find minerals which you can then feed to them, leading to them evolving and growing as time goes on. There was also a thing called the Cosmo Link, which was basically how you navigated your inventory and switched between weapons and which Spectrobes you wanted, and from there, you could even look at certain Spectrobes that were about to come out of the incubator, which is how you got the fossils to restore themselves. And touching back on the method of obtaining Spectrobes, let's talk about the excavation mechanic. Now, this one was incredibly frustrating. I know they were doing their best, and this is a really fun and intuitive, mechanic if you can really get it down, but I remember, almost pissing my pants in frustration of cutting off a fossil's leg by too much and destroying it entirely. So when excavating, you used the Wiimote as a cursor, and the nunchuck was used to change the angle of the fossil, and it gave it kind of a 3D space where you could rotate it all over. From there, you had 6 tools to excavate the Spectrobe. There was a scanner that allowed you to see where in the block that the Spectrobe fossil was, or pieces of it was. The laser, which was kind of like a pen and basically a solid beam that you would basically trace the outline of the fossil to remove the dirt. Drills, which would take off chunks of the rock layering but could lead to a lot of damage. Bombs, which were basically similar to drills but took large chunks out, and kind of like a crater, it also led to a lot of damage and destroyed a million fossils. The hammer, which is pretty self-explanatory, but you would basically place the cursor, swing the Wiimote and hammer it down until dirt fell away. And then the blower, of course, you used it to blow off some of the dirt and leftover debris from whatever the fossil was. From there, you would revive the Spectrobe using an awakening ritual kind of thing, where you would shake the Wiimote and the nunchuck and kind of use it to wake it up. Now that we've talked more about excavation and how to awaken them, I really want to talk about the Spectrobes themselves, because these guys were full of unique designs, and I can't praise it enough. Spectrobes had 3 forms. It was Child, Adult, and Evolve. Basically from level 1 to 5 it was Child, 5 to 29 it was an Adult, and then at level 30 it becomes Evolve, which is the final form. Spectrobes also took on a more elemental system as they went from the Corona, Aura, and Flash system to going by an elemental system of Plant, Sky, Earth, Water, and Fire. Spectrobes didn't have a large creature base, only having about 90, but these right here were probably my favorite ones out of all of them. The first one I want to talk about is Komainu, the starter Spectrobe that you get in the beginning of the game. His name referencing literally the lion dogs, or the stone guardians that are seen at the entrances of Shinto shrines. His second form fitting the statues almost perfectly. The only thing that's different is just the large protruding spines from his back. Then his third form, almost looking like a mix of a Mastiff and the Komainu statue. I like it a lot. His fur is super thick and it looks like a giant beast that can't be taken down. Another one I loved with a passion was Shaken. It was a water Spectrobe, and it was basically this little knife fish that looked like a little shank. It was the child version, so of course, it eventually evolved into some really cool, knife Leviathan. I don't know, Shaken was just really small and cute, and I liked him a lot. Also, the eye being in the blade was a really cool design. The last one I can say that really, blew me away and I loved so much was the final form of one called Hiko Olasa, which was basically this giant Hydra with, flaming, rotating wings like a helicopter. Oh man, with that and Hydreigon coming out, 4 years later, my love for, Hydras and big dragons was satiated. Moving on from the Spectrobes, now that we know about their full evolutions and even how they are used in elemental-wise, let's talk about the battle mechanics. Now, the battle mechanic was much different because they occurred in real time, whereas the last 2 games had a separate portal dimension where you would basically fight in an enclosed area. But in Origins, you fought just basically out in the open. And when fighting with them, you would use your nunchuck to give commands to the Spectrobes using swings or whatever kind of attacks. But there was also the aspect of certain weapons that mirrored Spectrobes in a different way, that you could equip to Rollin and it gave him certain elemental attacks. Checking the wiki, they don't really have a specific system, but there are a few weapons I remember, such as a grassy hammer used and a certain flaming sword. I'll put a bunch of the JPEGs up to kind of give you a better idea of what they look like. This was such an interesting mechanic because it felt more like Digimon than Pokemon, where the monster companion operated separately or together with you and you had your own individual weapon or individual movement cycle. As far as I can remember, and this might just be speculating, I'm pretty sure you could also fight if all your Spectrobes were defeated as Rollin and still accomplish a mission. If you were fighting, say, a boss that was low health, all your Spectrobes are down, you could still beat it as Rollin and accomplish your goal. Honestly, Studio Genki did an amazing job putting the intuitiveness and mechanics in this game into full effect. You almost felt like a real fighter, like you had some weight to your swings, some weight to your actions. Certain Spectrobes were better in certain matchups. It gives you a little bit of strategy. It wasn't overall too complicated, of course, because it was made for kids, but it gave it some kind of weight. So after I've spent most of this video glazing this game and really telling you how much I love it, I want to discuss a point more seriously in talking about why Spectrobes Origins, and therefore the entire Spectrobes franchise, didn't really live up to the hype that it was putting out. Now, all three games were getting low to mid reviews, usually ranking about 6 or 7 out of 10 for most review sites, and while normally mid scores don't really affect the game too much, it didn't help the series. By the third game, they weren't really going up in terms of reviews, even Spectrobes Origins only gaining I think 1 or 2 8 out of 10 reviews. That coupled with bad sales as the games weren't really selling that well. The first one selling for about $1 million, the second two not really breaking the $1 million mark and kind of staying under, so about $2 million roughly for all three games in total of sales. And the game had no merchandise, there was nothing. Pokemon had cards, stuffed animals, a TV show, video games. They had everything going in to contribute to the icon that it is. But Spectrobes had the 3 games and 3 comic books, a 4th not even being published. By the end of it, the series was just kind of seen as a liability. Sure, Spectrobes Origins was a huge improvement and scored better than the other two, but it took 3 games for them to really get there. And by then it was too little too late. In May 2016, Disney Interactive Studios closed, wanting to move away from self-publishing, go just purely into assisting third-party development of games. And with the studios closed, I don't know if we'll ever see another Spectrobes game, just because Disney does not like to let copyrights go even if they aren't using the property. So after talking about Spectrobes Origins as a whole, honestly at the end of it, it's a game I love. I know it's got tacky story writing, I know the game can be boring or tedious to some people, but it's a fun game. I think it's probably one of my favorite creature collectors in all time. You know, it was something I played as a kid day in, day out. It was one of my favorites, and I still think it's a really good game now, even with all of its flaws. All in all, I think it's just a game that will always have a loving fan base and will eventually grow and grow with more people, and who knows, maybe hopefully we can find a way to get a remake. But what do you think about Spectrobes? I know this is more of a nostalgic video than a review, but do you think the game's fun? Do you think it looks enjoyable? Or do you think it sounds like complete crap and you hate everything about it? At the end of it, no matter what your opinion, I just hope that maybe, just maybe, someone can find the game and truly enjoy it and have the love for it that I did. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you all so much for 100 subs. I hope that I can continue to make content that you all enjoy. Anyway, be safe, love yourself, and have a great day.